The morning mist clung to the ancient stone walls of Windermere Palace like ghostly fingers, creating an atmosphere that seemed almost prophetic of the chaos that would soon unfold. Captain Marcus Thornfield adjusted his ceremonial sword as he made his routine inspection rounds, his polished boots echoing against the marble corridors that had witnessed centuries of royal history. The palace, with its towering spires and magnificent gardens, stood as a testament to generations of monarchy. But on this particular October morning, it would become the center of a crisis that would shake the very foundations of the royal family. Princess Charlotte, beloved daughter of the Crown Prince and second in line to the throne, had always been known for her spirited nature and independent streak. At 15 years old, she possessed a combination of royal grace and youthful rebellion that both charmed and concerned her handlers. Her morning routine typically included horseback riding in the palace grounds, followed by private tutoring sessions and carefully orchestrated public appearances. The princess had shown remarkable intelligence and compassion, often surprising her tutors with insightful questions about governance and social issues that would one day become her responsibility. The royal household operated like a well-oiled machine, with every detail of the princess's life carefully planned and monitored. Lady Elizabeth Hartwell, her longtime governess, had served the royal family for over 2 decades and knew Charlotte's habits better than anyone. The security detail, led by Captain Thornfield, maintained constant vigilance while attempting to provide the princess with some semblance of normal teenage life. So, it was a delicate balance that required extraordinary coordination and trust among all members of the household staff. On this fateful morning, the usual routine began without any indication of the tragedy that lay ahead. Princess Charlotte had risen early, as was her custom, and requested to spend time in the palace's East Wing library, a vast repository of historical documents and rare books that had become her favorite retreat. The library, with its soaring ceilings and walls lined with leather-bound volumes, offered her a peaceful sanctuary where she could pursue her love of literature and history away from the constant scrutiny of palace life. The security protocol for the library was well established and had never been cause for concern. 2 guards were positioned at the main entrance, while a third maintained a discreet presence in the reading area. The princess was allowed considerable freedom within the library's confines, as it was considered one of the safest areas of the palace, accessible only through secured entrances and monitored by an advanced surveillance system that had been recently upgraded to include motion sensors and silent alarms. Lady Hartwell had accompanied the princess to the library, as was standard procedure, but had been called away to handle an urgent matter regarding the princess's upcoming charity appearance. She had reluctantly left Charlotte in the care of the security detail, with strict instructions that she was not to leave the library without proper escort. The princess had seemed in good spirits, carrying a stack of books about medieval history and expressing excitement about a research project she was working on for her advanced history studies. Captain Thornfield had personally reviewed the security arrangements that morning, noting nothing unusual in the princess's demeanor or requests. She had greeted him with her characteristic warm smile and had even inquired about his daughter, who was roughly the same age. The captain had served the royal family with distinction for 15 years and had developed a genuine affection for Princess Charlotte, whom he had watched grow from a precocious child into a thoughtful young woman destined for great responsibility. The library's atmosphere that morning was particularly peaceful, with autumn sunlight streaming through the tall windows and casting dancing shadows across the ancient Persian rugs that adorned the polished wooden floors. Princess Charlotte had settled into her favorite reading nook, a comfortable alcove surrounded by shelves containing first-edition works by renowned historians and political theorists. She had spread her materials across a mahogany table that had once belonged to a medieval queen, completely absorbed in her research about the social reforms implemented by progressive monarchs throughout European history. The first indication that something was amiss came at approximately 11:30 in the morning, when one of the guards noticed that the princess had not moved from her position for an unusually long period. While it was not uncommon for her to become deeply engrossed in her studies, the complete stillness was unprecedented and immediately raised concerns among the security personnel. The guard approached the reading nook with professional discretion, not wanting to disturb the princess if she was simply lost in thought or perhaps had dozed off while reading. What the guard discovered would haunt him for the rest of his life. Princess Charlotte was found slumped over her books, conscious but completely unresponsive to his gentle attempts to get her attention. Her beautiful blue eyes, normally so full of life and curiosity, stared blankly ahead without any sign of recognition or awareness. Most alarming of all, there were visible bruises on her arms and what appeared to be a small cut on her forehead, suggesting that some form of physical trauma had occurred despite the supposedly secure environment of the library. The guard immediately activated the silent alarm system while maintaining his position near the princess, calling for medical assistance and additional security personnel. Within minutes, the library was flooded with palace staff, including the chief physician, Dr. Margaret Whitmore, who had served the royal family for over a decade and was highly respected for her expertise in both general medicine and the unique health challenges faced by members of the royal family due to their high-stress lifestyle and constant public scrutiny. Dr. Whitmore's initial examination revealed several disturbing findings that would later become crucial evidence in the investigation that followed. The princess's injuries, while not life-threatening, were consistent with someone having fallen or been pushed with considerable force. More concerning was her complete lack of verbal response to any stimuli, despite appearing to be conscious and aware of her surroundings. Her vital signs were stable, but there were subtle neurological signs that suggested possible trauma or shock that required immediate and comprehensive medical evaluation. Captain Thornfield arrived at the scene within moments of the alarm being raised, his military training immediately taking over as he began implementing emergency protocols that had been carefully rehearsed but never actually used in a real crisis situation. The sight of the injured princess triggered a complex series of security measures designed to protect both her safety and the integrity of any potential crime scene, while also ensuring that news of the incident did not leak to the media or create panic among the palace staff. The captain's first priority was securing the immediate area and ensuring that no additional threats were present. He ordered a complete sweep of the library and surrounding corridors, while simultaneously initiating communication protocols with the head of palace security and the private secretary to the crown prince. The gravity of the situation was immediately apparent to everyone involved, as any harm to a member of the royal family represented not just a personal tragedy, but a potential national security crisis. Lady Hartwell returned to find the library in controlled chaos, with medical personnel attending to the princess while security officers conducted their preliminary investigation. The governess's distress was evident as she struggled to comprehend how such a thing could have happened under her watch, particularly in an area of the palace that had always been considered completely secure. Her knowledge of the princess's routines and habits would prove invaluable in the investigation, but her emotional state required careful management to ensure she could provide reliable information. The medical team worked quickly to stabilize Princess Charlotte and prepare her for transport to the palace's private medical facility, a state-of-the-art wing that rivaled any major hospital and was staffed by some of the country's most distinguished physicians. The princess's continued silence was deeply troubling to everyone present, as she had always been articulate and communicative, even in stressful situations. The possibility that she might have witnessed something traumatic that rendered her unable to speak added another layer of urgency to the security investigation. As word of the incident began to spread through the carefully controlled channels of palace communication, preparations were made to implement the most serious security protocol in the palace's modern history. The decision to initiate a full lockdown would not be made lightly, as it would effectively isolate the palace from the outside world and create significant logistical challenges for ongoing royal duties and scheduled appearances. However, the safety of Princess Charlotte and the integrity of the investigation took precedence over all other considerations. The crown prince was immediately notified of his daughter's condition, and his reaction would later be described by witnesses as a mixture of parental anguish and royal composure that demonstrated the unique burden carried by members of the royal family. His arrival at the medical facility created additional security concerns, as protecting multiple members of the royal family simultaneously required careful coordination and additional personnel deployment that stretched the palace's resources. The initial medical reports provided some reassurance that Princess Charlotte's injuries were not life-threatening, but the psychological trauma was clearly significant and would require specialized treatment and careful monitoring. The fact that she had been found injured and silent in what was supposed to be one of the most secure areas of the palace raised serious questions about the effectiveness of existing security measures and the possibility that the threat might have come from within the palace itself. As the afternoon progressed, it became increasingly clear that this was not a simple accident or medical emergency, but a deliberate act that threatened the very heart of the monarchy. The decision to implement a full lockdown was made by Captain Thornfield in consultation with the head of palace security and with the explicit authorization of the Crown Prince himself. This unprecedented measure would effectively seal the palace and everyone within it until the truth could be determined and justice served. The lockdown protocol had been developed years earlier but had never been implemented due to the extreme disruption it would cause to palace operations and royal duties. Every entrance and exit would be sealed. All communication with the outside world would be monitored and restricted, and every person within the palace grounds would be subject to questioning and verification. It was a drastic measure that reflected the serious nature of the threat and the determination of the royal family to protect their own and preserve the institution they represented. The implementation of the lockdown began immediately, with security personnel taking positions at all access points and communication systems being switched to emergency protocols. The palace staff, numbering over 200 people, including servants, guards, administrators, and visiting officials, would all be confined until the investigation could determine exactly what had happened to Princess Charlotte and whether additional threats existed within the palace walls. As darkness fell over Windermere Palace on that October evening, the ancient fortress that had protected generations of royalty became a prison for everyone within its walls. The investigation that would unfold over the following days would reveal secrets and betrayals that reached to the very highest levels of the royal household, challenging everything the royal family believed about trust, loyalty, and the price of power in the modern world. The silence that had fallen over Princess Charlotte seemed to echo through the palace corridors, creating an atmosphere of tension and uncertainty that would test the resolve of everyone involved in uncovering the truth behind this unprecedented attack on the royal family. The palace lockdown commenced at precisely 6 o'clock that evening, transforming the grand residence from a symbol of openness and accessibility into an impenetrable fortress. Captain Thornfield stood in the main security control room, watching as heavy steel barriers descended over windows and reinforced doors sealed every possible exit. The electronic systems hummed to life, creating multiple layers of surveillance and protection that would make escape impossible for anyone harboring malicious intent, while simultaneously trapping the innocent along with the guilty. The logistics of confining over 200 people within the palace walls presented unprecedented challenges that tested every system and protocol the security team had ever developed. Food service had to be maintained, medical care provided, and basic communications established, while ensuring that no information about Princess Charlotte's condition or the ongoing investigation leaked to the outside world. The media, already suspicious due to the cancellation of several royal appearances, would soon begin asking questions that could not be answered without compromising the investigation. Dr. Margaret Whitmore worked tirelessly through the night, conducting comprehensive medical examinations and neurological assessments to determine the extent of Princess Charlotte's injuries and the cause of her continued silence. The medical facility's advanced equipment revealed subtle brain activity patterns consistent with psychological trauma, but there were also physical indicators suggesting the princess had experienced significant stress or fear immediately before losing consciousness. The combination of physical injuries and psychological symptoms painted a disturbing picture of deliberate harm. The Crown Prince maintained a vigil at his daughter's bedside, his presence creating additional security considerations while providing the emotional support that medical experts believed might be crucial to Charlotte's recovery. Royal protocol typically maintained strict boundaries around family interactions, but the extraordinary circumstances required flexibility and adaptation to prioritize the princess's well-being above traditional formalities. The sight of the future king holding his daughter's hand while she stared silently into the distance became a powerful symbol of the personal cost of public service. Captain Thornfield initiated the systematic questioning of palace staff, beginning with those who had been in the East Wing during the morning hours when the attack occurred. Each interview was conducted with meticulous attention to detail, recording not just what people had seen or heard, but also their emotional responses and behavioral cues that might indicate deception or concealment of crucial information. The captain's military background served him well in reading people under stress, but the complexity of palace relationships and hierarchies added layers of difficulty to determining truth from fiction. The library itself became the focus of an intensive forensic investigation, with specialists examining every surface for physical evidence that might reveal how the attack had been carried out and by whom. The advanced surveillance system that monitored the area had mysteriously malfunctioned during the critical time period, with approximately 20 minutes of footage completely missing from the digital records. This technical failure was clearly not accidental, and indicated a level of sophistication that suggested inside knowledge of the palace's security systems. Lady Elizabeth Hartwell provided detailed testimony about the princess's routine and state of mind, revealing several concerning incidents from the weeks leading up to the attack that had previously seemed insignificant, but now took on ominous implications. Charlotte had mentioned feeling watched during her private time, had asked unusual questions about the loyalty of certain staff members, and had requested changes to her schedule that suggested she might have been trying to avoid someone or something within the palace environment. The investigation revealed that Princess Charlotte had been receiving anonymous notes for several weeks before the attack, messages that initially seemed like harmless admirer letters but gradually became more personal and threatening in tone. The princess had not reported these communications to her security detail, apparently believing they were from a romantic suitor among the younger palace staff and not wanting to cause trouble for someone who might simply be infatuated with her. This decision, understandable for a teenager trying to navigate the complexities of royal life, had potentially put her in grave danger. The forensic analysis of the library revealed traces of an unusual chemical compound on the table where Princess Charlotte had been working, a substance that could cause temporary disorientation and memory loss when absorbed through the skin. This discovery provided the first concrete evidence that the attack had been premeditated and carried out with sophisticated knowledge of chemistry and human physiology. The implications were terrifying, as it suggested the perpetrator had planned not just to harm the princess, but to ensure she would be unable to identify her attacker. As the second day of lockdown began, tensions among the confined palace staff reached dangerous levels, with various factions forming based on suspicion, loyalty, and fear. The servants' quarters became a hotbed of rumors and accusations, while the administrative staff struggled to maintain normal operations under extraordinary circumstances. Captain Thornfield recognized that the social dynamics within the palace community could either aid or severely hinder the investigation, depending on how carefully they were managed. The breakthrough in the case came from an unexpected source when one of the junior kitchen staff, a young woman named Sarah Mills, who had worked at the palace for only 6 months, approached Captain Thornfield with information she had been afraid to share earlier. Sarah revealed that she had witnessed a heated argument between Princess Charlotte and someone she could not clearly identify in the garden courtyard adjacent to the library 2 days before the attack. The conversation had seemed personal and emotional, with the princess appearing upset and the other person making what sounded like threats or demands. Sarah's testimony led to the discovery of a hidden entrance to the library through an old servant's passage that had been sealed decades earlier but recently reopened, apparently by someone with detailed knowledge of the palace's historical architecture. This passage provided a way for someone to access the library without being detected by the main surveillance systems, explaining how the attack could have occurred despite the seemingly comprehensive security measures. The existence of this route also indicated that the perpetrator had been planning the assault for considerable time. The investigation team expanded their focus to include anyone with access to the palace's architectural plans and historical records, significantly narrowing the list of potential suspects while raising disturbing questions about the depth of the conspiracy. The fact that someone had been able to research and access forgotten passages suggested either an inside accomplice or someone with extraordinary resources and determination. Either possibility represented a serious breach of the security systems that had protected the royal family for generations. Dr. Whitmore reported encouraging signs in Princess Charlotte's condition, with the beginning of verbal responses to familiar voices and some recognition of her surroundings. However, the princess's memories of the attack itself remained completely blocked, either due to the chemical substance used against her or as a psychological defense mechanism protecting her from traumatic recall. The medical team cautioned that forcing memory recovery too quickly could cause additional psychological damage and potentially impede her overall healing process. The Crown Prince authorized the expansion of the investigation beyond the palace walls, allowing Captain Thornfield to coordinate with external law enforcement agencies while maintaining strict confidentiality about the specific nature of the incident. This decision represented a significant shift in royal policy, acknowledging that the threat to the family might extend beyond their traditional protective boundaries and require resources and expertise not available within the palace's internal security structure. The psychological pressure of the lockdown began affecting everyone within the palace, creating an atmosphere of suspicion and paranoia that threatened to undermine the very relationships and loyalties that had always been the foundation of royal service. Long-serving staff members found themselves questioning colleagues they had trusted for years, while newer employees felt the weight of suspicion simply due to their recent arrival. Captain Thornfield recognized that maintaining morale and unity would be crucial to both the investigation's success and the palace's future functioning. The analysis of Princess Charlotte's personal effects revealed additional disturbing evidence, including a diary entry from the night before the attack in which she expressed fear about someone's increasingly inappropriate behavior toward her but did not name the individual. The diary also contained references to feeling trapped between her desire to protect someone she cared about and her growing awareness that this person might represent a threat to her safety. The emotional complexity revealed in these private writings painted a picture of a young woman struggling with impossible choices and adult responsibilities. The technical investigation into the surveillance system malfunction revealed sophisticated knowledge of electronic security measures, suggesting either professional training or extensive research into the palace's specific equipment and protocols. The timing of the system failure was precisely calculated to provide maximum opportunity while minimizing the risk of detection, indicating careful observation of security routines and procedures. This level of planning pointed toward either a highly skilled external threat or someone with intimate knowledge of palace operations. The discovery of a second chemical trace in the princess's private quarters shocked the investigation team and revealed that the attack in the library had likely been preceded by an earlier attempt that had failed or been interrupted. This evidence suggested that Princess Charlotte had been stalked and targeted over an extended period, with her attacker becoming increasingly bold and desperate to complete their plan. The implications for palace security were staggering, as it meant their protective systems had been compromised for weeks or possibly months, without detection. As the third day of lockdown approached, Captain Thornfield faced the reality that the investigation had revealed a web of deception and threat far more complex than initially suspected. The evidence pointed toward someone with deep access to palace life, detailed knowledge of royal routines, and the technical skills necessary to circumvent sophisticated security measures. Most disturbing of all, the personal nature of some of the evidence suggested that Princess Charlotte had known and possibly trusted her attacker, making the betrayal even more devastating. The medical team reported continued improvement in the princess's condition, with her beginning to ask questions about what had happened and expressing concern for the people around her. However, her inability to remember crucial details about the attack itself meant that the investigation would have to rely on physical evidence and witness testimony rather than victim identification. This limitation added pressure to ensure that no detail was overlooked and no potential lead remained unexplored, as there might not be another opportunity to gather this information. The social dynamics within the confined palace community continued to evolve, with natural leaders emerging among both staff and investigators, while others retreated into fear and isolation. Captain Thornfield recognized that these human factors could provide valuable insights into the case while also creating additional challenges for maintaining order and cooperation. The balance between conducting a thorough investigation and preserving the trust and loyalty that enabled the palace to function effectively required constant attention and delicate management. The dawn of the fourth day brought an unexpected development that would fundamentally alter the direction of the investigation and challenge everything Captain Thornfield believed about the people he had sworn to protect. Princess Charlotte, showing remarkable courage despite her traumatic experience, requested a private meeting with the captain to share information she had been too frightened to reveal earlier. Her recovery of partial memories, facilitated by Dr. Carson. Whitmore's careful therapeutic approach had unlocked disturbing recollections that painted a picture of systematic manipulation and psychological abuse that had been building for months. The princess revealed that she had been receiving gifts and notes from someone claiming to be a secret admirer. Communications that had initially seemed romantic, but gradually became possessive and threatening when she failed to respond appropriately. The messages had demonstrated intimate knowledge of her daily routines, personal preferences, and private conversations, that could only have come from someone with extraordinary access to her life. Most disturbingly, the sender had made it clear that rejection of their advances would result in consequences that extended beyond just Charlotte herself, to include people she cared about. Captain Thornfield listened with growing horror as the princess described a campaign of psychological terrorism that had been conducted with such subtlety that even her closest companions had failed to recognize the danger. The perpetrator had skillfully exploited Charlotte's compassionate nature and sense of responsibility, using her desire to protect others as a weapon against her while gradually isolating her from potential sources of help and support. The sophistication of this approach suggested someone with deep psychological knowledge and possibly professional training in manipulation techniques. The investigation team immediately began analyzing the gifts and notes that Princess Charlotte had secretly kept, hoping they might provide crucial forensic evidence or behavioral clues about the perpetrator's identity. The items revealed a disturbing pattern of escalation, with early communications expressing admiration and devotion, while later messages contained veiled threats and demands for exclusive access to the princess. The psychological profile that emerged suggested someone who viewed Charlotte not as a person, but as an object to be possessed and controlled. The forensic analysis of the communication materials yielded several promising leads, including handwriting samples that could be compared against known palace personnel, and paper that appeared to be standard palace stationery available only to individuals with specific access privileges. More significantly, the chemical analysis revealed traces of the same compound found at the attack scene, definitively linking the anonymous communications to the assault in the library and confirming that this had been a long-term campaign rather than an isolated incident. The breakthrough came when Dr. Whitmore, reviewing the medical files of all palace personnel as part of the expanded investigation, discovered that one staff member had recently been prescribed medication for a severe psychological disorder that included symptoms of obsessive behavior and delusions of romantic attachment. The individual in question was Thomas Ashworth, a maintenance worker who had been employed at the palace for 2 years and had gradually gained access to areas normally restricted to senior staff through his demonstrated reliability and technical expertise. Thomas Ashworth's background check revealed a carefully constructed facade that had successfully deceived the palace's hiring procedures and security clearance process. His previous employment history, while technically accurate, had been selectively presented to hide a pattern of inappropriate behavior toward female colleagues and supervisors. The references provided during his application process had failed to mention several incidents that would have immediately disqualified him from palace service, either due to deliberate concealment or inadequate investigation by his former employers. The revelation that the threat had come from within their own carefully vetted staff created a crisis of confidence among the security team and palace administration that went far beyond the immediate investigation. Captain Thornfield faced the reality that the systems and procedures he had trusted to protect the royal family had been systematically compromised by someone who had studied their weaknesses and exploited them with patience and skill. The implications for future security protocols would require a complete reevaluation of how the palace assessed and monitored personnel. The search for Thomas Ashworth began immediately, with security teams conducting a systematic sweep of the palace to locate him, before he could realize that his identity had been discovered. The lockdown that had initially seemed like an unfortunate necessity now proved to be a crucial tactical advantage, as it meant the perpetrator was trapped within the same walls as his victims and investigators. However, Ashworth's knowledge of the palace's hidden passages and maintenance systems gave him significant advantages in avoiding detection and potentially planning additional attacks. The psychological profile developed by consulting experts painted a picture of an individual who had likely been planning this campaign for years, possibly targeting Princess Charlotte specifically, before even seeking employment at the palace. The level of preparation and patience demonstrated suggested someone capable of long-term strategic thinking who would not easily surrender or submit to capture without attempting to complete his obsessive goals. The immediate priority became ensuring the princess's continued safety while systematically eliminating Ashworth's options for escape or attack. The discovery of Ashworth's personal quarters in the staff dormitory revealed the true extent of his obsession and the sophisticated nature of his planning. The small room contained detailed schedules of Princess Charlotte's activities, photographs taken without her knowledge, and elaborate written fantasies about their supposed relationship. Most disturbing were the detailed architectural drawings of the palace, including previously unknown passages and access points that Ashworth had discovered during his maintenance work and mapped for potential use in his campaign. The evidence found in Ashworth's room also revealed his growing desperation and instability in the weeks leading up to the attack, with journal entries describing his frustration at Charlotte's failure to reciprocate his imagined feelings and his determination to force a confrontation that would make her understand their destiny together. The writings demonstrated a complete break from reality, with Ashworth apparently believing that the princess was deliberately ignoring obvious signs of mutual attraction, and that dramatic action was necessary to overcome the artificial barriers keeping them apart. Captain Thornfield coordinated the manhunt with military precision, dividing the palace into search zones and assigning teams to systematically clear each area, while maintaining communication protocols that would prevent Ashworth from monitoring their progress. The captain's knowledge of the building's layout and security features proved crucial in predicting likely hiding spots and escape routes, but Ashworth's maintenance background gave him access to areas that even longtime security personnel had never fully explored. The psychological pressure on Princess Charlotte during this period was immense, as she struggled with guilt over not reporting the threatening communications earlier, and fear that her attacker might still be able to reach her, despite the security measures. Whitmore worked closely with royal counselors to provide therapeutic support, while also helping Charlotte recover additional memories that might prove crucial to the investigation. The princess's resilience and determination to help capture her attacker demonstrated maturity and courage that impressed everyone involved in her care. The discovery that Ashworth had been secretly documenting the personal lives and routines of other female palace staff created additional concerns about the scope of his criminal behavior and the possibility of other victims who had not yet come forward. Several young women on the housekeeping and administrative staff reported incidents they had previously dismissed as coincidences or harmless attention, revealing a pattern of predatory behavior that extended well beyond his obsession with Princess Charlotte. This information added urgency to the capture effort and highlighted the need for comprehensive victim support services. The technical investigation revealed that Ashworth had been using his maintenance access to install unauthorized surveillance equipment in various parts of the palace, creating a comprehensive spy network that had allowed him to monitor Charlotte's activities and conversations without detection. The discovery of these hidden cameras and listening devices required a complete security sweep of the entire palace and raised serious questions about what other compromises might exist within the supposedly secure environment. The search effort intensified when security teams discovered signs that Ashworth had been preparing contingency plans for extended hiding within the palace walls, including cached food supplies and bedding in rarely accessed areas of the building's infrastructure. This preparation indicated that he had anticipated the possibility of discovery and lockdown, suggesting either exceptional planning ability or inside knowledge of security protocols. The realization that he might be able to remain hidden for days or weeks added pressure to find him quickly before he could implement additional plans. The emotional toll on the palace staff during the extended search became increasingly apparent, with many longtime employees struggling to comprehend how someone they had worked alongside could have harbored such dangerous intentions. The sense of violation and betrayal affected not just those who had interacted directly with Ashworth, but everyone who had believed in the security and sanctity of their workplace. Captain Thornfield recognized that addressing these psychological impacts would be crucial for the palace's long-term recovery and functioning. The investigation revealed that Ashworth had been systematically studying the personal relationships and emotional vulnerabilities of palace staff, apparently seeking leverage he could use to advance his obsessive goals or cover his tracks if discovered. His psychological manipulation had been subtle but effective, with several staff members admitting they had shared information about Princess Charlotte's routines or feelings without realizing how this data might be misused. The sophistication of these social engineering techniques demonstrated that the threat had been far more comprehensive than initially understood. Dr. Whitmore's continued work with Princess Charlotte yielded additional recovered memories that provided crucial details about the attack itself, including Ashworth's emotional state and specific words he had used during their confrontation. The princess recalled that he had seemed both desperate and angry, suggesting that some recent event had triggered the escalation from psychological harassment to physical assault. This information helped investigators understand his timeline and possibly predict his next moves, while also providing evidence that could be used in eventual prosecution. The systematic search of the palace's extensive underground infrastructure revealed the true scope of Ashworth's preparation and the sophisticated nature of his plans. Hidden caches of supplies, detailed maps, and what appeared to be preliminary escape routes suggested that he had been preparing for this confrontation for months and had developed multiple scenarios for different outcomes. The discovery of these preparations forced the security team to completely reassess their understanding of the threat and adapt their search strategies accordingly. The breakthrough in locating Ashworth came from an unexpected source when the palace's aging heating system began showing unusual fluctuations that suggested someone was interfering with the infrastructure controls. Ashworth's maintenance background had given him detailed knowledge of these systems, and his desperation had apparently led him to attempt sabotage that might create confusion or force evacuation of certain areas. This tactical error provided the search teams with crucial information about his location and psychological state, while also revealing the extent of his technical capabilities and willingness to endanger innocent people. The confrontation with Thomas Ashworth came at dawn on the 5th day of the lockdown, in the depths of the palace's mechanical infrastructure, where he had established what appeared to be a command center for his twisted campaign. Captain Thornfield led a carefully coordinated team through the maze of pipes and machinery, following the trail of sabotage that had ultimately betrayed Ashworth's location. The environment was cramped and dangerous, with steam pipes and electrical systems creating hazards that limited the security team's options while providing Ashworth with defensive advantages he had clearly planned to exploit. The discovery of Ashworth's underground lair revealed the true extent of his obsession and the sophisticated nature of his psychological warfare against Princess Charlotte. The small space contained hundreds of photographs of the princess, taken without her knowledge over many months, detailed psychological analyses of her behavior and preferences, and elaborate written scenarios describing imaginary romantic encounters. Most disturbing were the meticulous plans for what he called intervention strategies, designed to isolate Charlotte from her support systems and force her into situations where she would be dependent on him for protection and comfort. Ashworth's deteriorating mental state was evident in the increasingly erratic and violent nature of his recent journal entries, which described growing frustration with Charlotte's failure to recognize their supposed connection and detailed fantasies about dramatic gestures that would force her to acknowledge his devotion. The writings revealed a man who had lost all connection to reality and was operating under delusions so severe that he genuinely believed his stalking and harassment were expressions of love that would eventually be appreciated and reciprocated by his victim. The tactical approach to Ashworth's capture required extraordinary care, as his knowledge of the palace's infrastructure gave him access to systems that could endanger the entire building and everyone within it. Captain Thornfield coordinated with engineering experts to identify potential threats and develop containment strategies that would prevent Ashworth from using his technical knowledge as a weapon against innocent people. The realization that he had been preparing contingency plans involving the building's gas and electrical systems added urgency to the operation while limiting their tactical options. When the security team finally cornered Ashworth in the mechanical room that had become his fortress, they encountered a man who bore little resemblance to the reliable maintenance worker who had served the palace for 2 years. His appearance had deteriorated dramatically, with signs of poor hygiene and sleep deprivation, suggesting that he had been living in increasingly primitive conditions while planning his final confrontation with Charlotte. His behavior alternated between manic excitement about finally being discovered and paranoid rage about being misunderstood by people who couldn't appreciate the purity of his feelings. The negotiation process proved extraordinarily challenging, as Ashworth's delusional state made rational communication nearly impossible while his technical knowledge created genuine threats that had to be taken seriously. He alternated between expressing hurt confusion about why Charlotte had rejected his advances and making explicit threats about what he would do to ensure she could never ignore him again. Captain Thornfield recognized that traditional hostage negotiation techniques were inadequate for dealing with someone whose connection to reality was so severely compromised. The breakthrough in the negotiation came when doctors dominated and First-in-Boss did dominated and placed an answer to oppose. Whitmore, working from her understanding of Ashworth's psychological profile, suggested an approach that acknowledged his feelings while redirecting his focus away from harmful actions. Speaking through communication systems that allowed her to remain safely distant while still engaging directly with Ashworth, she began the delicate process of establishing rapport with someone whose mental state made him extraordinarily dangerous while also being genuinely ill and in need of medical intervention. Dr. Whitmore's therapeutic training proved crucial in managing Ashworth's emotional volatility and preventing him from acting on his threats against the palace's infrastructure. She recognized that his obsession with Princess Charlotte was symptomatic of deeper psychological disorders that had likely been developing for years before he ever encountered the royal family. Her approach focused on validating his emotional pain while establishing clear boundaries about acceptable behavior and gradually introducing reality-based thinking that challenged his delusional beliefs about his relationship with Charlotte. The medical intervention required to safely apprehend Ashworth involved careful coordination between psychiatric specialists and security personnel, as his mental state made him both unpredictable and potentially violent if he felt cornered or rejected. The goal was to minimize trauma for everyone involved while ensuring that Ashworth received appropriate treatment for his psychological disorders rather than simply being treated as a criminal whose actions had no underlying medical causes. This approach reflected the royal family's commitment to compassionate justice even in cases involving threats to their own safety. The final phase of Ashworth's capture required extraordinary patience and skill, as any sudden movements or perceived threats could trigger violent responses that might endanger both the security team and innocent palace staff. Captain Thornfield coordinated the operation with medical personnel who specialized in crisis intervention, ensuring that Ashworth would be safely sedated and removed from the palace without creating additional trauma for the community that had been terrorized by his actions. The successful resolution demonstrated the effectiveness of combining security expertise with mental health professionals in dealing with complex threat scenarios. Princess Charlotte's reaction to news of Ashworth's capture was complex, combining relief at being safe with genuine sadness about the suffering that had driven him to such desperate actions. Her compassionate response reflected both her natural empathy and her growing understanding of the responsibilities that came with her royal position, including the reality that people might develop unhealthy attachments to her public persona that had little connection to her actual identity. This maturity in the face of trauma impressed everyone involved in her care and recovery. The investigation into Ashworth's background revealed systematic failures in the security clearance process that had allowed him to gain employment at the palace despite warning signs that should have been detected during proper screening. His previous employers had failed to document behavioral problems adequately. Reference checks had been superficial, and psychological evaluation had been limited to basic assessments that missed the subtle signs of developing obsessive disorders. These discoveries necessitated a complete overhaul of hiring and monitoring procedures for all palace personnel. The impact on palace staff morale was significant, as many long-time employees struggled with feelings of betrayal and vulnerability after learning that someone they had trusted had been systematically planning to harm a member of the royal family. Support services were immediately established to help staff process their emotions and rebuild their sense of security, while also addressing practical concerns about how to prevent similar incidents in the future. The royal family's personal involvement in these recovery efforts demonstrated their commitment to the well-being of everyone who served them. The technical security review revealed that Ashworth's access to maintenance systems had created vulnerabilities that extended far beyond his specific obsession with Princess Charlotte, potentially compromising the safety and privacy of all palace residents and staff. The hidden surveillance equipment he had installed required extensive investigation to determine what information had been compromised and whether any of it had been shared with outside parties. This technical breach necessitated a complete reconstruction of the palace's security infrastructure, with enhanced monitoring and access controls. The psychological analysis of Ashworth's behavior patterns provided valuable insights for developing improved threat assessment procedures that could identify potentially dangerous individuals before they gained access to sensitive environments. Mental health experts worked with security professionals to create screening tools and monitoring systems that balanced the need for safety with respect for individual privacy and civil rights. These developments represented significant advances in protecting high-profile individuals from obsessive and delusional attackers. The legal proceedings against Ashworth were complicated by his mental health issues, requiring careful coordination between criminal justice authorities and psychiatric specialists to ensure appropriate treatment, while also addressing the serious nature of his crimes. The royal family's approach emphasized rehabilitation and understanding rather than purely punitive measures, reflecting their belief that mental illness should be treated with compassion even when it results in harmful behavior. This position influenced broader discussions about how society should address crimes committed by individuals with severe psychological disorders. The recovery process for Princess Charlotte involved not just healing from her physical injuries and psychological trauma, but also learning to navigate public life with the enhanced security measures that would now be necessary to protect her safety. Whitmore worked closely with the princess to develop coping strategies and resilience skills that would allow her to maintain her natural warmth and accessibility while being appropriately cautious about potential threats. This balance between openness and security would become a defining challenge for her future royal duties. The broader implications of the incident extended beyond the immediate royal family to include questions about security for all public figures and the challenges of maintaining accessibility while providing adequate protection. The sophisticated nature of Ashworth's campaign highlighted the evolving threats faced by high-profile individuals and the need for security measures that could adapt to new forms of psychological manipulation and technological exploitation. These lessons influenced security protocols not just for the royal family, but for government officials and other public figures as well. The palace community's healing process involved rebuilding trust and communication among staff members who had been forced to view each other with suspicion during the investigation. Captain Thornfield implemented new procedures for reporting concerns and maintaining awareness of potential threats, while also fostering an environment where people felt safe and valued as part of the royal household. The balance between security consciousness and community cohesion required ongoing attention and adjustment as the palace adapted to its new reality. The successful resolution of the crisis demonstrated the effectiveness of coordinated response procedures that combined traditional security measures with mental health expertise and compassionate intervention techniques. The lessons learned from the incident influenced emergency protocols and training programs that would better prepare security personnel for dealing with complex psychological threats in the future. These developments represented significant advances in protecting both potential victims and disturbed individuals who posed threats due to mental illness rather than criminal intent. The aftermath of Thomas Ashworth's capture marked the beginning of a profound transformation within the palace community that would reshape how the royal family approached security, staff relations, and public engagement for years to come. The lifting of the lockdown after 6 days of unprecedented isolation brought both relief and anxiety, as everyone struggled to process the reality that their trusted colleague had been capable of such systematic deception and potential violence. Captain Thornfield faced the enormous challenge of rebuilding confidence in security systems while maintaining the openness and trust that had always been hallmarks of royal service. Princess Charlotte's recovery progressed steadily under Dr. Whitmore's careful supervision, but the psychological impact of her ordeal would require months of therapeutic support and gradual reintegration into public life. Her remarkable resilience impressed everyone involved in her care, but the medical team remained vigilant for signs of post-traumatic stress that might emerge as she processed the full implications of what had been planned against her. The princess's determination to resume her royal duties and educational pursuits demonstrated courage that inspired the entire palace community and reinforced her family's pride in her character. The comprehensive review of palace security procedures revealed systemic weaknesses that had developed over decades of gradual policy evolution and bureaucratic complexity. Background checking procedures that had been adequate for simpler times proved insufficient for detecting sophisticated psychological disorders and carefully concealed behavioral problems. Captain Thornfield worked with external security experts to develop new protocols that balanced thorough screening with respect for applicant privacy, creating systems that could identify potential threats without becoming so intrusive as to discourage qualified candidates from seeking palace employment. The installation of advanced psychological evaluation procedures for all palace personnel created initial resistance among long-serving staff who felt their loyalty was being questioned after years of faithful service. Captain Thornfield and the royal family addressed these concerns through personal meetings and clear communication about the necessity of protecting everyone within the palace community, not just the royal family themselves. The emphasis on mutual protection and collective responsibility helped overcome resistance, while demonstrating that the new measures were about caring for people rather than expressing distrust. The investigation into Ashworth's activities revealed that his surveillance network had captured information about other royal family members and high-ranking government officials who visited the palace regularly. This intelligence breach required extensive damage assessment and notification procedures that tested the palace's relationships with security agencies and diplomatic partners. The thorough handling of these sensitive communications helped maintain international confidence in the royal family's ability to protect classified information and maintain appropriate security standards. The legal proceedings against Ashworth unfolded, with careful attention to both justice for his crimes and appropriate treatment for his mental health conditions. The royal family's public statements emphasized their concern for Ashworth's well-being alongside their commitment to protecting potential victims, demonstrating a balanced approach that reflected their values while acknowledging the serious nature of his actions. This compassionate stance influenced public discourse about mental health issues and criminal responsibility, contributing to broader social conversations about how society should address similar cases. The psychological support services established for palace staff during the crisis evolved into permanent programs that addressed the unique stresses and challenges faced by people working in high-security environments. Whitmore collaborated with occupational health specialists to create resources that helped employees maintain mental wellness while dealing with the constant awareness of potential threats and the pressure of protecting people they cared about. These programs became models for other organizations dealing with similar security and psychological challenges. The technological upgrades to palace security systems incorporated lessons learned from Ashworth's exploitation of maintenance access and surveillance blind spots. The new systems balanced comprehensive monitoring with privacy protections, using advanced artificial intelligence to identify suspicious behavior patterns, while avoiding the creation of an oppressive surveillance state within the palace community. The integration of human judgment with technological capabilities created security measures that were both more effective and more respectful of individual dignity. Princess Charlotte's gradual return to public duties required careful planning and coordination to ensure her safety, while maintaining the accessibility that had always characterized her interactions with the public. The security modifications were designed to be invisible to casual observers, while providing comprehensive protection against various threat scenarios. The princess's natural warmth and genuine interest in people remained unchanged, but her security team now operated with enhanced awareness and more sophisticated threat assessment capabilities. The broader impact of the incident on royal family relationships revealed both strengths and vulnerabilities in their support systems and communication patterns. The crisis had brought them closer together, while also highlighting the need for more open discussion of security concerns and personal feelings about the unique pressures of royal life. Family counseling sessions helped them process the trauma collectively, while developing better strategies for supporting each other through future challenges and maintaining their individual well-being. The influence of the incident on palace culture extended beyond security measures to include enhanced communication protocols and community-building activities that strengthened relationships among staff members. Regular meetings and social events were established to maintain awareness of potential concerns while fostering the mutual trust and support that had always been essential to effective royal service. The goal was creating an environment where people felt comfortable reporting unusual observations without creating an atmosphere of suspicion and paranoia. The international attention generated by the incident, despite careful media management, led to enhanced cooperation with security agencies from other countries facing similar threats against their public figures. The sharing of intelligence and best practices helped develop improved protection strategies while maintaining appropriate confidentiality about specific vulnerabilities and countermeasures. These professional relationships strengthened the overall security environment for all participating organizations and their protectees. The academic and professional study of the Ashworth case contributed valuable insights to the fields of threat assessment, workplace violence prevention, and psychological profiling that benefited organizations far beyond the royal family. Research institutions and security consultancies incorporated lessons learned from the incident into their training programs and evaluation procedures, helping other organizations identify and address similar threats before they could develop into dangerous situations. This knowledge sharing amplified the positive impact of the palace's painful experience. The long-term monitoring and treatment of Thomas Ashworth provided ongoing insights into the development and management of obsessive disorders that threatened public figures and other individuals in positions of prominence or authority. Mental health professionals used his case to better understand the progression from admiration to obsession to potential violence, developing intervention strategies that could identify and address problematic behavior patterns before they escalated to criminal actions. These advances in psychiatric treatment and prevention helped protect both potential victims and individuals struggling with similar psychological challenges. The resilience demonstrated by the entire palace community during and after the crisis became a source of pride and strength that enhanced their effectiveness in serving the royal family and the broader public interest. The shared experience of facing and overcoming a serious threat together created bonds of mutual respect and cooperation that transcended traditional hierarchies and departmental boundaries. This enhanced unity and communication improved the palace's ability to fulfill its mission while maintaining the highest standards of security and service. The ongoing recovery process for Princess Charlotte included not just personal healing, but also preparation for the enhanced responsibilities and public scrutiny that would characterize her future role as a senior member of the royal family. Her experience with Ashworth's obsessive attention provided painful but valuable insights into the psychological dynamics that could affect her relationships with the public throughout her life. The coping strategies and awareness skills she developed with Dr. Whitmore's guidance would serve her well in navigating the complex challenges of royal duty in an increasingly connected and intrusive media environment. The final resolution of the security review resulted in a comprehensive new framework for palace operations that balanced traditional values with modern realities about threats and protection requirements. The changes were implemented gradually and with careful attention to maintaining the essential character and mission of royal service, while adapting to contemporary security challenges. The success of this transformation demonstrated that even ancient institutions could evolve and improve while preserving their core identity and values. The lessons learned from the incident influenced security practices throughout the government and private sector, contributing to improved protection for public officials, corporate executives, and other individuals who might face similar threats. The palace's willingness to share appropriate information about their experience and solutions helped other organizations avoid similar vulnerabilities while developing their own threat assessment and prevention capabilities. This collaborative approach to security challenges reflected the royal family's commitment to public service that extended beyond their traditional ceremonial and constitutional roles. Years later, as Princess Charlotte assumed increasingly important responsibilities within the royal family, the strength and wisdom she gained from surviving and recovering from Ashworth's campaign of psychological terrorism served her well in facing the inevitable challenges of public life. Her experience had taught her valuable lessons about trust, security, and resilience that enhanced her effectiveness as a royal representative, while also deepening her empathy for others who faced similar challenges. The dark chapter that had begun with her discovery in the palace library had ultimately contributed to her development as a leader who understood both the privileges and perils of public service in the modern world.